we also want you to sign up for that, and we'll be sending that sign up around to sign up and let us know that you're coming. Some of you may already have your name on here, but we'll send that around.
Okay.
So welcome, and now I'll turn it over to Dr. Timothy Gerhardt.
Thank you, Karen. There. Living free of dementia. Who's here for the first time? Wonderful. I'll cover some highlights from the first class, and then, as she mentioned, they'll be on the slides. We'll send the slides to you if you like. Then you don't have to worry about trying to keep up with notes. So, title is Living Free of Dementia. Do you believe it's possible to live free of dementia?
Yes.
Good. There's places called the blue zones. Dan Buhner, the National Geographic scientist in residence, and the research teams have identified 6 of them now around the world. One of them is in Loma Linda, California, and it's a Seventh-day Adventist community. They promote healthy living. And so one of the videos showed a 92-year-old gentleman. He got a bid on doing a fence, and he thought it was too high, so he said, I'm going to just do it myself. He's 92. It was a split rail fence. He dug the holes, set the rails, did the whole thing, and he did that hard for 3 days. The next day, he was in the hospital with heart surgery. He was the surgeon doing the surgery. He's a cardiovascular surgeon at 92. That is normal. That's not common, that's normal. By the way, he was not making jokes about memory problems. You don't do that as a surgeon. So, solving the puzzle to prevent and reverse cognitive decline, we're going to explain what that means. So, people ask, who's Dr. Gerhardt? Occasionally I ask that question. And I've been committed to lifelong learning, growing, and development. And one of the things I appreciate about, I know about people in this group, is you're committed to growing and learning, or you wouldn't be here. And I appreciate and respect that. So, the most recent book, Living Free of Dementia, Solving the Puzzle to Prevent and Reverse Cognitive Decline. The first thing is, we can live free of dementia. There is a genetic part, it's small. Lifestyle is huge. Our lifestyle choices even determine how our genes act. When we work to solve the puzzle and we do the work of TLC, we can live free of dementia. What's TLC? Some people who've been here before. Yes, thank you. The word doctor in Latin means teacher. You're making me feel good. It means tender, loving care for your brain and body. But in this context, it also means therapeutic lifestyle change. You notice that word, change. So, tonight we're going to talk about what causes dementia is the result of neurodegeneration. That means neuron, brain cell degeneration. Is dementia reversible, and what does our brain and body need to stay well for peak brain performance for a lifetime? So, humor is healing. 10 signs you're getting older. Can everybody read that okay? We're getting it, good. What about this one? So, there's 2 couples out for a walk. The 2 wives are walking in front and the 2 guys are following up behind. And one guy says to the other, what'd you do last night? And he said, we went to this wonderful new restaurant. Great food, it was healthy, I felt good, tasted great, and it was budget friendly. The other guy said, what was the name of it? He said, what's the name of that flower right on top? Long stem, kind of these thorn things coming out. He said, it's a rose. He said, hey, Rose, what was the name of that restaurant? Humor is healing, and we all have memory jokes. However, dementia is deadly. I didn't realize that dementia leads to death. In fact, if you don't die of something else, when you're diagnosed with Alzheimer's, Alzheimer's leads to death if something else doesn't kill you first. Ronald Reagan, his death certificate said pneumonia. He didn't die of pneumonia. He died of Alzheimer's type dementia that shut down his breathing centers that caused his pneumonia. So 1 in 3 seniors right now is dying with Alzheimer's. Deaths from Alzheimer's have increased to 123%. 1 in 2 Americans over age 85 will be diagnosed with Alzheimer's in their lifetime. That's 50%. 7 to 10% is an epidemic. What's 50? So this is unacceptable. There's parts of the world that have virtually no Alzheimer's, and we can learn from them. We have an epidemic of neurodegenerative disease leading to dementia, and it's the fastest growing cause of death in America. It's now number 3, and it may be even number 2. The stats are not always so good. And there's no effective medical treatment. What does that mean? There's no drug, there's no surgery that fixes this. So the current medical model is you have a symptom, declining cognition, you can't think straight, memory problems, and mild memory things that happens occasionally, we make jokes about it. But when it persists, when it's chronic, you may get a term, go to a doctor, they'll do some testing, and they say it's mild cognitive impairment. Or we do a neurocog test, we can see things. And what's the current treatment? Different medications. So anybody heard of Aricept? It's common. Does Aricept do anything to help the brain? No. What about Namenda? Another one. No. Have you heard of Razidine? That's the combination of Aricept and Namenda. I just looked it up. It's $4,970 for a bottle of 30 pills. It's $167 per pill. Now, does it work? No. Unfortunately, in the Journal of the American Medical Association, their network open journal, they published the results of a meta-study, 10 of the best studies done in the field. What they showed that these Aricept and Namenda actually associated with a more aggressive decline in cognitive function. They may help symptoms a little bit, but they make the brain go downhill faster. Does that make sense? That's $1 billion a year drug right now, a drug category. So instead what we do is for every symptom we ask, what are the roots? Is that singular? No, it's plural because there's usually more than one. The computer graph I use when I do that has 14 spaces. Testing, what gets measured gets improved. And so what vitamin, when it's low, strongly contributes to dementia? Let's see how, vitamin D, good group, yes, you're making me feel good. Low vitamin D, because the primary underlying mechanism, and I'll show you in a moment, of dementia is excessive inflammation. It's the brain on fire. Vitamin D regulates inflammation. What other supplement regulates inflammation? It's not a vitamin.
Omega-3.
Yes, very good. Omega-3s. Very good. Nice job. So the omega-3 fish oil regulates gene transcription of inflammatory proteins. So testing. So people say, well, I'm taking fish oil. Well, great. Is it working? Throwing things at the wall and hope they stick doesn't work with this. We need to measure to make sure. Some people, they're taking it, it's not working. Some people are taking the wrong kind. Some people are taking too much. Wellness is balance. You can do too much of anything. What is too much water called? Drowning, yes. Yes, good job. So wellness is balance. So we use a puzzle model. So people say, well, I eat really well. How could this happen? Well, great. Is that the only piece of the puzzle? No. Each one of these pieces is important, and I would suggest the most important puzzle piece is the one that's missing, or plural, the ones that are missing. So the first class we went into cellular energy, and where is energy made? It's made in every cell, and it's made in factories in the cell. Remember what they're called? Yes, thank you, Wendy. Mitochondria. And I'll show you a picture of that. Digestion, the second brain, and we'll touch on that a bit. We're going to go a little bit more on this today, and then we're going to focus mostly on eating smart and supplementing smart. In the last class, I'll hit some highlights, and then we're going to focus on the last three. You notice monotherapies, treating one piece of the puzzle is rarely enough. Dementia is not easy to turn around. You have to solve the puzzle. You have to work at it. You have to give it time as well. So what does our brain need to work well, to live free of dementia? It's the E word. Energy. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mary. How's that for subtle? Energy, energy, energy. We need energy. Now, we mentioned we make energy in the what? The M word. Mitochondria. Making energy is called metabolism, converting food to energy. So when metabolism is efficient in the mitochondria, over here, we make lots of energy as energy is called what in the body and the brain? It's a 3-letter, starts with A. Yes, ATP, very good. How much ATP? I'm about 150 pounds. I make 150 pounds of ATP per day when I'm healthy. We recycle it many times. And very few harmful free radicals. Over here, this is what dementia looks like. This is what diabetes looks like. That's what cancer, heart disease, arthritis. This is what virtually every chronic disease of aging looks like. We're not making enough energy. This is fibromyalgia. Instead of energy, we're making harmful free radicals that create inflammation. They damage the brain, they damage the heart, they damage the blood vessels. Our dementia starts in the mitochondria. Virtually every chronic disease of aging starts in the mitochondria. When it works well, what do these people look like? They're lean, fit, and full of energy. They eat a lot and they stay lean. They eat the right stuff. They're not doing M&Ms and Twinkies. Over here, it's not fair. You just look at food and you put on weight sometimes. But instead of making energy, you're making fat and free radicals. And then we have sometimes thin fat people. They look thin, but they've lost muscle and replaced it with fat. Very high inflammation. So that's where we make energy. That's ground zero. So our mighty mitochondria, every microscopic neuron in the brain, and there's 100 billion of them, has these mitochondria, up to 10,000 per microscopic neuron. Is that remarkable or what? A neuron can burn up to 4.7 billion ATP per second. Think of that's gasoline molecules of ATP. And then our mitochondria talk to our microbiome. Who's heard the term microbiome before? Good, we're going to go into that because our microbiome is critical for our mitochondria to work well. Wellness can be defined now as happy mitochondria and a happy microbiome. So, inflammation, it's the greatest enemy of our brain. It's really a big deal. So, what does inflammation do? This is an image of a healthy brain. You see all that healthy tissue? This would be, there's mild, moderate, and severe loss of brain volume. See how the brain's shrinking on the outside? But it's also shrinking on the inside. What happened to those nerve cells? Billions of them. They died, and they're gone. So the bad news is we do make some neurons, but we can't really get those billions of neurons. We can't get them back. We can help the rest of the brain work well and rewire and do surprisingly well. I'll show you an example. The patient I'm going to show you towards the end had moderate loss of brain volume, a little bit less than this, and you'll see how her brain improved, even though the scan would not look different. The reason we choose a healthy lifestyle, we eat well, we supplement, exercise, all the things we talk about, is we want to stay here. We do not want to go there. That is not normal with aging. Unfortunately, it's common in this country, but it's not normal. That cardiologist that I talked about, the cardiovascular surgeon, he does not look like that. And he's 92. My dad's 84. He doesn't look like that either. He's over here. So, photobiomodulation. Anybody heard that term? It's really cool stuff. It's also called the healing lasers. Laser means coherent light. If you translate, it means using photons of light to modulate, rebalance. Remember, wellness is balance? Biology. So those photons of light energize the mitochondria. The research shows us where cytochrome C oxidase, and it's like removing the governor so you can make more energy. It boosts energy. It's like a battery charger. It's been shown to reverse neuroinflammation and neurodegeneration. Is that cool or what? Remember that shrinking brain? This reverses the damage in the mitochondria, and if we get at it early enough, the cell doesn't die. So it reverses, anybody heard of tau protein, like with Alzheimer's? It reverses those misfolds. Anybody heard of amyloid plaque? That's the big thing in the research. It reverses beta amyloid plaque, reverses glial cell activation, and this is wonderful. It activates brain-derived neurotrophic factor. The hippocampus, one of the critical in the just intertemporal lobe area that makes responsible for critical parts of memory, it makes new neurons, new brain cells throughout our lifespan. When I went through school, we were taught that we stopped making new brain cells very early in life. And now we know we make some throughout our life. So this is an example of that photobiomodulation. Yes, we use it with animals. I had a patient had their dog in that was really in pain. You just touch the poor dog, it was cry in pain. We did this therapy along with adjusting, and the dog just melted on the table and it just went peaceful, and it was very remarkable. The owner said, you should have videoed this. It was remarkable to see. That's me doing that laser on my forehead, prefrontal cortex, first brain, and my second brain at the same time. This is a home use version. The nasal membranes, our whole blood supply circulates through 5 times every 25 minutes. I do that daily. That's an excellent one for overall body and brain health. So the question is, how well is our brain functioning? So these are some of the symptoms. Anxiety, depression, sleep problems can be a symptom of the brain degenerating. So are these: ADD, ADHD, Alzheimer's, of course, brain fog, brain fatigue, digestive problems. And the most significant is you can have a lot of brain degeneration with no symptoms at all. The brain is shrinking, the way I showed you, but the symptoms don't show up till very late. It's kind of like brushing your teeth. Do not wait for pain to decide to brush your teeth. Prevention goes a long ways on this. So we went into this last time. Brain fatigue. I can't read as long. One of my patients could no longer enjoy reading a novel. She couldn't remember the plot line. And it's reversed, which has been really fun. Depression and anxiety, often signs of the brain degenerating. Digestive problems, wow. Starting to develop leaky gut, gas, bloating, food sensitivity, swallowing problems. That's often a sign of brain degeneration. Major swallowing problems are linked to which brain degeneration disease? Parkinson's. But the most common is typically mixed dementia. So you have some Parkinson's, you have some Alzheimer's, you have some vascular dementia all together. And so we don't treat those types of dementia, we treat roots, what's causing it. Okay, so is my brain suffering? One of the most important tests you can do is test your balance. You should be able to stand on one foot like that and close your eyes and stay solid for at least 10 seconds, ideally 15. Decreasing balance is strongly linked to dementia, and that's one of the tests we do on a computer force plate, precisely measure types of balance. Another one is a neurologic path pointing, and we did this last time, and for new people, we'll do it again today. So with your index finger above your head, we'll do this in a moment together, you'll bring your opposite tip to tip right to where you think it is and stop. And we'll do this eyes closed. So let's put your right hand above your head first. Slowly bring your left all the way up to right to where you think it is and stop. Good. Now tip your head back and look. Like mine's off a bit. I'm mild, moderate, severe. Now do the same on the opposite side. And if you can't remember which is the opposite, that's a different problem. Let's go tip to tip right here again, eyes closed, and look back. Okay, good. So with a properly balanced brain, we are touching. If it's not tip to tip, it's really slightly offset. That is mild, moderate, and severe. And which side is off means something regarding brain balance as well. So that's what the balance testing that we do looks like. The neurocog assessment, that is, we measure types of memory and brain processing speed against a normal database, what it should be for your age, and it's used now in 60 languages in 52 countries. And so we do this commonly. I'll show this on an actual patient. And what I like is this kind of testing used to be, you go into a doctor's office, it'd be about $500. It's now $79. We do it on a computer. This is brain gauge, another way of looking, and this is especially nice. This is for somebody after concussion. The brown is the areas of the brain in trouble, and you can see the brain healing. And day 19, this person's doing wonderfully. So that is an EEG, brain waves. So we're looking at brainwave activity. And this is Mr. Benzie, our new puppy. So let's stand up and take a little break here. Too much sitting is not good for the brain. No surprise. So we're going to, last time we did box breathing. Today we're going to talk about another kind of breathing. Anybody have trouble going to sleep at night? Falling asleep easily, quickly? Okay, good. So this is great for falling asleep. Anybody have trouble with anxiety? This is great for calming. So it's called the 4-7-8. We're going to breathe in together. We'll do this together in a moment. We'll breathe in to a count of 4. We'll hold to a count of 7. And then when you breathe out to a count of 8, it'll be a like I'm pursing my lips, forcing that air out to a count of 8. So the 4-7-8. Let's do it together. Before we start, Lincoln, we said what gets measured gets improved. In your brain, tune in, how am I doing for peaceful? 10 is ideal, 5 is medium, 0 is terrible. I'm doing public speaking, which I used to give me panic attacks almost. So I'm doing about a 7 or 8. For me, is pretty good. So now we're going to do this and we'll recheck. Now taking a breath, breathe in to a count of 4. Hold to a count of 7. Breathe out to a count of 8. All the way. Let's repeat. In to a count of 4. Hold to a count of 7. Breathe out, count of 8. Good. Doing great. One more. Hold 7. Breathe out, count of 8. What do you notice? How do you feel? What does your peacefulness do? Yeah. Isn't that nice? Good. You can put yourself to sleep with that. And with practice, it gets better with practice. Sometimes I'll repeat it about 10 times and I'm out. Go ahead and grab a seat. And by the way, our pets are good for our brain health. So keeping our life in balance, we need sufficient play. We need time interacting with others, including our pets, and we need downtime. And we need laughter. And I laugh at our goofy little puppy a lot. So we talked about a first and second brain. Research has been incredible over the past 2 decades, telling us that our second brain has profound effect on the first brain. So much so that this brain has 100 billion neurons, this has 500 million neurons. And it's impossible for this brain to be healthy if that isn't working right. Why? Every neurotransmitter, anybody heard of serotonin, dopamine, acetylcholine, some of those? Every neurotransmitter made here is made where? Also in the second brain. In fact, of all the serotonin, low serotonin linked with depression, anxiety, and all sorts of issues. Where is most of our depression, or excuse me, our serotonin made? 90 to 95% is made in the second brain. Does that sound important? So every neurotransmitter made in that brain is made in the gut. Every gut hormone here is also made in the brain. The brain's a gut, the gut's a brain. Dr. Perlmutter taught me that well. We must have a healthy gut for a healthy brain. So, anybody heard the term leaky gut? So, this is the inside of your intestine. Where does that end up? That ends up in the toilet. Now, you notice that lining? That's 1 cell thick. That separates what goes in the toilet from what? Our bloodstream. Do you want toxins that are supposed to go in the toilet? Stinky, poopy stuff going in your bloodstream. That's what leaky gut does. What separates is 1 cell thick lining. When it works properly, we have a tight junction. Sealed. When it's damaged, and many things damage it, and we'll talk about that. Now toxins, undigested food, bacteria leak right into what? The bloodstream. Where does the blood go? To the brain. What does the brain do? It lights on fire with inflammation. Inflammation is behind what process, from what you've learned? Too much inflammation causes what? Yes, it causes pain in your knee, bursitis, tendonitis, arthritis. But in the brain, inflammation causes what? Yes. Your brain swells actually, but it degenerates. It's like a fire inside. The primary mechanism of dementia is the brain on fire. So we don't want toxins. That is one big cause of lighting our brain on fire. Does this happen overnight? No. This is over years and decades. So that one cell thick lining right here, let's look at another picture of that same thing. You see it right here? In reality, it's curved like that. And you see those little fingers called microvilli? That's so you can absorb good stuff like nutrients. Some people can't absorb B12. That's because these are damaged. You can actually erode those off so they become smooth. What food, toxic food, is especially damaging to this and damages the brain? Something, yes. And there's something, too much sugar is a big one. And this one starts with the G. Gluten. Yes, very good. And we'll talk about that. So when it's healthy, we have lots of bacteria, but they're like a rainforest. The bacteria in the gut are really an organ, one of our largest organs, called the microbiome. And they generate a protective gel-like lining that protects this. And down here is the bloodstream and also the immune system, immune cells. People, if you've heard of autoimmune disease, most of our immune system, 3/4 is in the gut. So anytime you have autoimmune disease, think gut. And when you have a brain disease, you got to think gut. So this would be happy brain over here. With leaky gut, now we have, instead of a rainforest, we have overgrowth of weeds. They digest away that protective lining and they attack. Now we're leaking stinky, toxic stuff into our bloodstream, bacterial remnants, and they activate inflammation. And so excessive inflammation is behind what kind of diseases? Dementia, of course, stroke, heart attack, cancer, diabetes, arthritis, bursitis, tendonitis, irritable bowel, all of those. So excessive inflammation now is considered a critical factor in virtually all of our chronic disease. So the gut lining is ground zero for chronic disease. Chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, obesity, diabetes, the list goes on. Eczema. You see all these annoying commercials on TV for psoriasis? Why are we seeing all those? And by the way, those are really expensive, some of those drugs. They're in the $5,000 a month again because we have a lot of Americans living here. Because how do Americans eat? Some of the worst eating on the planet. In fact, it's in the research it's called the SAD diet. Standard American diet, SAD. We'll talk about that and how to. But anxiety, panic attacks, depression start in the gut. Bipolar, anxiety, all of that. I have never in my decades in practice worked with somebody that has major mental health issues that did not have a messed up gut. And it makes sense if you understand the mechanism. So part of what we want to deal with is we want to avoid living in sympathetic overdrive. So sympathetic overdrive, these are the yellow nerves on the chart I'm going to show you in a moment. This is the gas pedal of your nervous system. And imagine you're trying to pass somebody on a 2-lane road and you have to kick it into overdrive and go to red line to safely get around them. What happens if you stay in red line for the rest of the trip, and it's a 3-week trip? That's not going to work so well. That's often what happens. So the pedal to the metal part of our nervous system is designed so we can survive being chased by a saber-toothed tiger in ancient times. And when that happens, our blood sugar goes up, our blood pressure goes up, our immune inflammation goes up, clotting goes up. But it's designed for just minutes. And the research done on this, typically 30, 40 minutes, But I see people that have been here for decades. So this part of the brain, the lower brain, controls the sympathetic, the yellow nerves. That's the gas pedal. The really big problem with living under the hormones of stress, pedal to the metal, is the opposite nerves, the green ones. They're like the brake, but on like a Prius, where you recharge the battery. The green nerves turn on healing and repair, calm and peaceful, digestion and detox. They dial back inflammation. Does that sound important? When the yellow nerves crank on, the green nerves almost turn off. When you're running from the tiger, you don't waste energy on healing and repair. And that's okay for minutes, but that's not okay for years. And so that's one of the critical things that we have to look at when we work with people. So these are some of the approaches we use for de-stressing. Who has a meditation or mindfulness practice, contemplative prayer, where you set aside quiet time daily? I do, because it's critical to my brain. Believe me, I didn't always. And sometimes when my brain was really in serious anxiety, it was very hard. And so I needed help to help my brain so I could start doing this. There's mindfulness, there's guided mental relaxation, there's listening to calming music, there's many approaches. That is critical. So I think of it as our brain is like a rubber band. You can stretch it, but then you can unstretch it, right? You can do that for a lifetime. Well, what happens if you stretch it? Stretch it, and stretch it, and keep going. Then something breaks. That is part of dementia, one piece of the puzzle commonly. In fact, very common. We use types of spinal nerve stimulation to affect the brain, to calm the brain. We use forms of acupuncture, including laser, and ear points are awesome for the brain. So we talked about the microbiome. It's the largest organ in our body by number of cells, but most of us haven't heard about it. You don't see it on anatomy charts. The microbiome, it's anticipated in the next 10 years, the major breakthroughs in health are going to be in the microbiome. It is one of the top areas of research right now. Is there any way to dial that back a little bit, Karen? Thank you. So 100 trillion non-human cells, they talk to our brain. We talked about the mucous microbes, and it's really like a complex complex rainforest. Microbiome by the numbers. About 99% of our DNA in the human body is not human. It's in the microbiome. So the microbiome, we were taught that germs are bad, right? No, the reality is it's everything around us. Every surface is covered. We have up to 10 million bacteria per square centimeter. Centimeters 0.6, a little over half inch square. What we want is balance. And so our microbiome is like a rainforest on the inside that wants to be our friend when it's in balance. And there's many things we do to harm it. Antibiotics. One dose will kill off up to 99% of the rainforest on the inside. And then it grows back, but it doesn't grow back right. And if you do that often enough, instead of a rainforest, you have a weed patch. And that weed patch creates inflammation and all sorts of trouble. Herbicides, pesticides, many of our home cleaners, many different drugs. But also, we're going to talk about food tonight. What percent of Americans get enough fiber for health and wellness, for a healthy microbiome? Less than 5%. We need fiber. Fiber feeds the microbiome. We used to call it roughage as if it's just it's really important. Loss of food diversity. Our ancestors ate about 600 different foods during the year. Typical American eats about 15. That diversity feeds the diversity of our rainforest on the inside. So we're going to talk about that more too. So how do we boost it? Make a habit of every time you go to the grocery store, go back into the fresh part. You know where you have the sprayers? They have food that does not have stickers on it. You know, it's the fresh stuff. and get something new and different every time. And you may not know how to cook it. I don't know how to cook a lot of stuff. I just throw it in the blender and I make a veggie smoothie. So my wife does recipes, and that tastes really good. I've never found a recipe I can't ignore, but a different approach. Limit sugar, manage stress. Eat organic. Wow. And for limited food dollars, focus your organic on your meats and chicken, because the meats concentrate the pesticides. And so that's really important. And so Costco has very organic ground beef that's surprisingly affordable. Organic chicken. They have all this. Costco is, Sprouts, there's many places they have this now. Fry's has a surprisingly good selection. And then we'll talk about supplements to support that microbiome diversity. So basically, remove the bad stuff, replace the good stuff. That's a critical part of helping the gut. And then we're going to talk in just a bit about probiotics. So I started using probiotics 36 years ago, and they're helpful. But now we understand they do not go down into the gut and reseed it. So imagine this rainforest inside the large intestine, small intestine, is like a healthy lawn. You want a healthy lawn that naturally chokes out weeds, right? Somebody comes along and they spray the whole lawn with Roundup. It kills everything. It kills the weeds, it kills the grass. Now you have a dead turf. What grows up next? Weeds. So we used to think probiotics were like grass seed, and they would, but now we know they don't make it through stomach acid and the bile acid of the intestine. So they don't survive. They do not reseed the gut. Typical probiotics. And then prebiotics are like the fertilizer, and they're therapeutic fibers that feed certain healthy bacterial strains. And then postbiotics are what the microbiome makes, like short-chain fatty acids. Anybody heard of metformin for diabetes? Yeah, do you know how that works? Metformin increases production of the short-chain fatty acids. How do you do it naturally? A healthy microbiome. That's the best way to do it. So I'll show you, go into that a little bit more. So let's talk about eating smart. First of all, what's America's top drug problem? Number one drug problem. It creates more death, harm, and suffering than any other drug. Possibly more than all the other drugs put together. Sugar. Americans use sugar as a drug. Our ancient ancestors consumed about 3.5 pounds of sweeteners per year. You climb up a tree, find a hive, stick your hand in it, get stung, get some honey, and then decide I'm going to wait a couple months before I do that again. In America, do you see people hauling bags of sugar home? No, it's hidden in everything. If you go to McDonald's, it's in the bun, it's in the sauce, it's in the ketchup, it's even in the salt. Look at the little salt thing. It'll say dextrose in there. So it's in our foods. So grains, unfortunately, 2 slices of whole wheat bread have the same effect as 6 teaspoons of pure sugar. Grains convert right to sugar. So if you're going to do some grains, go light on it. And then add maybe healthy fats to slow it down. And we'll talk about balance. But if you really want a healthy brain, go light on the grains. So Dr. David Perlmutter, famous neurologist, New York Times bestselling author. He's a consultant to the Dr. Oz show. He's been on TV a lot. The surprising truth about wheat, carbs, and sugar, your brain's silent killers. He's a board-certified medical neurologist. He does over, I think, 150 research references in the book. It's kind of it's one of the go-tos on that. So, what's that called?
Oh my.
Yeah, from North Dakota when I grew up, we called it a beer belly. Now we know it's called vat. It means visceral, around the organs, adipose tissue. Vat is called the fat that kills. So we know as that gets bigger, the brain gets smaller. And actually, to pose for that picture, what does that tell you? What does that tell you about his brain health? So the opposite is, the less our food has been doctored, the less we need a doctor. Mark Sisson says, eat like your life depends on it. Eat as if your brain depends on it, because it does. Our eating is profoundly important. And oftentimes we take better care of our brain or our cars than we do our brain. Imagine you get your new car, how much sugar, salt, and sand can I put in the gas tank and get away with? I mean, you wouldn't do that. And yet, so those colors, and I'm not talking M&Ms. I'm talking our veggies, our fruits, the fresh stuff. Those colors are polyphenols that talk to genes to turn off inflammation. Our colors reduce our inflammation, are profound for brain health. Eat color. So that's from Dr. Jack Wolfson, cardiologist. Notice what's the foundation. What's good for the brain is good for the heart and vice versa. Vegetables. Anybody ever hear that? Grandma said, eat your vegetables. So quality protein. I mentioned free range. So people tell me, okay, I hear on one hand, beef is bad. On the other hand, beef is good. What's the answer? They're both right. So let's dig a little deeper. Grass-fed beef is a health food. It's high in EPA, DHA. Remember the fish oil comes from grass. It's really healthy. Corn-fed beef from a feedlot, fed GMO corn, is a disaster. It's highly inflammatory, it's bad news, and it's unhealthy fats. So, and the same thing we hear carbs. Carbs are good, carbs are bad. So we have to dig deeper. So kale is a carb. Kale's a superfood. Twinkies are a carb. Not so much. So healthy fats. We were told that fat is bad, right? Now we know that fat does not make us fat. Not healthy fats. That makes us lean. Sugar makes us fat. Too much sugar. So avoid the white stuff. Greens make us lean. Nuts and seeds. What are some healthy nuts and seeds? What about chia seeds? A superfood. I'm going to show you a breakfast oatmeal alternative with chia seeds. Chia seeds are high in protein, zero effect on blood sugar. Because when you eat I asked one patient, came in, what do you have for breakfast? It was Captain Crunch. It was nice they were honest, and they've improved now. But what does Captain Crunch do? Your blood sugar spikes right up, your insulin goes up, blood sugar goes down. That insulin makes the sugar convert to fat and go to your midsection, and it lights your brain and body on fire. So we want things that don't raise blood sugar. And so the grains raise blood sugar. Chia seeds, zero. Another one, hemp seeds, flax seeds, all of those. There's cashews, macadamia nuts, really healthy fats, walnuts, yep. Almonds, pepitas, cashews, yep. Pistachios are another good one. So, and then variety. Remember, variety is the spice of life. With eating, we often get in a rut. We kind of do the same thing all the time. A rut is a grave with the ends kicked out of it. Avoid ruts. So, healthy oils, and then where's fruit? The smallest. Can you enjoy fruit? Yes. But don't be a fruitaholic. Often we get these two, as my father-in-law says, bass-ackwards. We need more vegetables than fruit. What are the healthiest fruits? The berries. But if you're going to do strawberries, go organic. And if organic's expensive, go frozen organic. That's really cost effective. Okay? Any questions on this one? What do you not see on here? Do you see grains? No. Now, if you're really healthy and you got a great brain, you can do grains a little bit. But gluten-free is really important.
Do meat growers or cattle people, do they spray their grass fields at all?
Great question. Generally not. Now, there's organic, there's grass-fed, there's different. Grass-fed typically it's pasture-raised and tends to be really good. Organic grass-fed would be even better. And we don't need perfect, we just need really good. So, top brain smart foods. And again, if you want to, that list, we send you the slides. Variety of the fresh stuff. The principle is avoid foods that come in, some of you have heard, food coffins. What's a food coffin? It's a can, a box, plastic with dead food in it. You want living food, food that doesn't have a label or a barcode on it, the fresh stuff. Kale, broccoli, cauliflower, all the vegetables, healthy fats. And dairy, the dairy protein was also not on that. Remember, the dairy protein is highly inflammatory. Now, grass-fed butter is almost devoid, is really clean. It has almost none of the butter, or the milk protein in it. So that's a healthy fat. Some of the healthy fats, we talked about, if you're going to do fish, do wild caught. Farm-raised fish is a bad idea. And wild blueberries are a superfood. Anybody had wild blueberries? You get them frozen typically. They're awesome. And where do you get them? Costco has them. Sprouts, Trader Joe's has them. Yep. Okay, these are some smoothies, and we passed out some recipes on the smoothies for you. So an easy way to get vegetables, and remember we talked about get a new vegetable, is you throw it in your smoothie. Blend and serve. I do it typically on the weekend, and I do 6 or 7 mason jars full, quart size, and then I do 1 a day during the week. And you don't have to do that much, but for me that's been profoundly. And so I just grind everything up in my Vitamix and put it in glass jars. That's another green smoothie. And these are ways you can modify it. And then you can use beet juice or pomegranate juice to add a little bit of sweetness to make it more taste better. MCT oil, there's many ways you can do that. Now, this is the breakfast of champions. This is not Wheaties. So what are we doing? Chia seeds. We get those at Costco. A quarter to a half cup, this was my breakfast this morning. Cup of hot water, cinnamon, sea salt. I added, it was wild blueberries today, and I did unsweetened organic soy milk, but other times I'll use hemp milk or hazelnut. And that is a breakfast that really sticks to your ribs. If I didn't eat something healthy, by mid-morning my blood sugar would drop and I get a little edgy and spacey and shaky and feel bad. That's critical. So here are some cookbooks that help you get started. Pardon?
I'm surprised the soy.
Question was soy milk.
Yeah.
So Dr. Mercola in particular does not like soy. Dr. Bland and some of the top people in the field that I've through the years listing is sorting it out. Organic soy in moderation is okay. One reason we know it is what culture uses lots of soy? The Far East, Japan, Okinawa, and often it's cultured, but they're not doing genetically modified and in processed foods. That's different. So just like the more your food has been processed, the more of a problem it is. When you're using some of these soy isolates in different junk food, that's trouble. Yes?
What about quinoa? That's a seed.
Quinoa is actually a grain.
Actually, I thought it was a seed.
I had understood as a grain, you could be right, but my understanding, the glycemic index, it's nothing as good as chia seeds, but it's a healthier of the grains.
Okay.
That was my understanding.
I had never heard. Well, I kind of researched it, and they said that it was a seed, and it has the 7 amino acids in it.
Okay.
So,
There may be different opinions on that, but quinoa is one of the healthier. Now, what happens if you have low inflammation, if you have a really fat tummy, you have lots of muscle, and you have great blood sugar regulation, you can enjoy some of the grains in moderation. If you have the belly fat and inflammation, and you get a suffering brain, taking a break from grains for a while really will help your getting well. Yes?
Is frozen food considered fresh?
Great question. Frozen, the question is frozen food the same as fresh? No. But frozen food is a pretty darn good option. 2 days a week I use Cascadian Farm frozen California mix as my base for vegetables. Frozen organic. It's better to do frozen organic than it is to do fresh stuff with a bunch of pesticides on it, if that helps. Okay. So supplementing smart, our last section we're going to cover today. So we call them the core 5. About everybody for a happy brain needs a multiple vitamin. One a day doesn't cut it. It needs to be something designed to use at least 3 or 4 a day. And it doesn't mean go to Walmart or Costco and you get the one a day or Centrum and you just take more of them. No, it needs to be something that's quality designed for that. That's the favorite one I use. That's a 4-day, and it comes out to about 97 cents a day for a month's supply. The fish oils we talk about, fish contain contaminants, PCBs, dioxins, lead, mercury. So you want a fish oil that's clean, it's been purified. Contaminant, rancid-free. The newest monoglyceride form is the super absorbable stuff. I have one professional vendor source for that. It's 320% better absorption. That's a super concentrate. So one capsule is equivalent to 4 or 6 of typical things. And so it's by far the most cost effective. Vitamin D, we used to have vitamin D here. We've removed vitamin D from the core 4. It's now vitamin K2D3. Do not take vitamin D without K2. It's critical for a bunch of reasons. And who knows their vitamin D level? Everybody should get it tested. If you're going to do one lab test for your brain, check your vitamin D. You cannot have a happy brain free of dementia with a low vitamin D long term. Low vitamin D will create type 2 diabetes. And this was last class. It'll also create type 3 diabetes, which is diabetes of the brain, strongly linked to dementia. Brain Relax Max. Our brain needs magnesium, magnesium, magnesium. Magnesium is the brain's natural, calming, tranquil, peaceful. We also need it to make energy. And most Americans are depleted in magnesium. When we're under stress, what happens to our magnesium? We pee it out. And so, yes?
Good, better, and best on magnesium. Citrate.
The question, thank you. Good, better, best. The best magnesium is one that fits your needs. And everybody's a little different. So magnesium threonate crosses the blood-brain barrier. Magnesium glycinate is highly absorbable. Magnesium citrate's a good one. If you have tendency towards constipation, that's a great one to help reverse that. The one I like best to start with many people is Brain Relax Max, that combines a form of magnesium that works in the Krebs cycle, in the mitochondria, with myo-inositol, incredibly soothing to a stressed brain. With taurine, an amino acid, help you hold on to magnesium, and then with L-theanine and GABA to support GABA, which is a calming neurotransmitter. And then a lot of people have inflammation. Curcuplex 95 and Inflamarest work really nicely for many people. And then there's another version that we use that crosses right into the brain. And then, anybody heard of glutathione? Yeah, glutathione is really important after concussion and really important with most of the people I see with dementia. There's a lab test called GGT. It would be in an expanded liver profile. It's a $15 lab test. It tells us if you're depleted in glutathione. But that's a really important one. The person I'm going to show you with a really dramatic change in their brain, that was one of the critical. That's a triple form liposomal glutathione, one of the best ones. So beyond probiotics. So we talked about how probiotics don't always get to the gut to be active. The new Megaspore, this has been used prescription in Europe for decades. It's now available here. It's a spore-based probiotic. What does that mean? That means the bacteria are in the spore form. You can bake them in the oven at 425 degrees and they stay active. Shelf life is 5 years unrefrigerated. They actually re-inoculate, replant the rainforest. And they're some of the most effective things I've ever seen. Repair leaky gut, the University of Texas study, 60% improvement in leaky gut in 30 days in college students. And they're drinking beer on weekends and pizza during the week. Vitamin K2, who's heard of that other than this class? Okay. Do you know how you make vitamin K2? You use those strains with natto, with a soy compound to manufacture vitamin K2. This allows us to make it internally. Then prebiotic, so that doubles the effectiveness. These are selective prebiotics that feed the keystone bacteria to get this healthy again. That mucus lining is made by a strain called A-mucin. The levels go up 8,000% when using that prebiotic. That's one of my favorites. And then megamucosa, it uses selective amino acids to regenerate that lining, and then it uses the immunoglobulins to bind up these LPSs that create inflammation. That is a remarkable program for the gut. So, just wrapping up now. Lynn, a wonderful patient I had worked with a number of years, and then she started to go, hadn't seen her in a while, and she was going downhill with memory. She had a brain scan, an MRI, and it showed white matter disease. Anybody heard of that? It's very common. It's white spots, and we now understand it's because of micro-mini strokes. And often we can have many of them and not aware of it. And it's called vascular dementia, white matter disease. And that was moderate. She had moderate loss of brain volume. I wanted to cry when I saw that. She was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and then also a tremor developed and diagnosed with Parkinson's. So she had mixed dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and vascular dementia. So what did her neurocog look like? Remember, the X's should all be in the greens, right? You shouldn't have even one X in the colors. That's what she looked like here. We added in that trisomal glutathione I talked about, and we did neurofeedback, brain training, that our next class I'll go into. This is what she looked like. We solved her puzzle. We'd been working with her with lifestyle. We worked with all of the pieces she needed, not just one thing. And that's what she was like after. Now, I just did a workup on her, or follow-up, last month. And now all of her X's are in the above average. Wow. She's doing incredibly well. Her brain, remember the shrinkage? If we did another MRI, it would still be the same. But the brain is working so well. Does she have a brain on fire? No. No. Is she making energy well in the mitochondria? Right. Is her microbiome doing well? Yeah. Is her vitamin D and all those things? Yes. We've solved the puzzle for her. She's doing the work, and we're so proud of her. And we're working with her as a guide. That's possible. And believe me, I see that not just with her. Not always this dramatic, of course. That is possible. And we have a whole bunch of these in our records. So Lisa's going to take over. What we do when we functional medicine, functional neurology, brain balancing, we put it all together. So, yes. We actually have, can we send that slide to you?
I haven't received any slides.
No, we're going to send them. If you give your email address to Karen.
I gave it to her.
Okay.
I didn't get anything for the last one.
Okay. Karen will make sure you get those.
We talked with you before you did.
Okay? Okay.